Okay, so we've learned how to make a square and we've learned how to make a cube and a circle. So now let's learn how to make a cylinder in perfect perspective. Okay, so I've got my horizon line and I've just sort of arbitrarily said like this is the leading edge of my square back here. And so, I'll go and maybe I should use a little bit of a ruler. Okay, and just find that that's going to go here, and we've got this here, taking this leading edge back, and we're going to go with this here. All right, nothing new so far. Hopefully you've been watching. Okay, and we say like, okay, this is where the end of the square would be. Okay, cool. So there's my first little square, right? Okay, so now basically what I need to do is I need to just draw a cube. So if I was just to go up, let's say, about this far right here. Okay, and about the same over here, hopefully. Let's see, let's measure, why not? Okay, so we've got that there, and bring that up a little bit more, right about there. Okay, cool. And so here's the leading edge of our cube. Okay, and of course that's going to also go back to the vanishing point. I know it looks really complicated already, huh? But it's not. This is all old stuff. Okay. And so then I'm just going to take and make the square on top. Okay, so that's how far that will be. And look at this, right? If you do things right in perspective, then everything is always going to just kind of, well, line up, right? So here's our bottom square, right? So you would think, well, I can just draw straight up, and you could. And look at that. It ran into exactly where the top square would be. Okay, so let's get rid of the lines that we don't need because it's already confusing me, right? So I don't need all this. And remember, maybe if I was doing this for realsies, I wouldn't have drawn all that in the first place. I don't need all this. Same thing. I don't need the perspective center of the cube at all. Okay, so there we go. We're just going to power through all that noise going on outside. Hopefully it's not too bad for you. But so there's my cube, right? So now I just need to find the little circle on the top and bottom, not too hard. So I won't be super precise about it, but just, know if I had to go down here, right? So there's a little square. I could find the center now of that square. Now that's not the perspective center. That was way the heck up here probably if I was to draw it out. But it's the measured center. Okay, I could go over here. Right? I could even find the halfway point on here. Nip those. Only takes a second, right? Just dividing all those kind of in half. Right? And so here, and here, and here, and here. And so, I've kind of got my bottom oval. Oh, that wasn't too hard. All I have to do is stay more or less within those lines, and I've got a nice perfect oval. Okay, let me get rid of all those lines that I don't need. We don't need to be confusing everybody. Okay, I don't even need any of all this. Okay. So you can see here's my cube, and it's just got a nice little circle at the bottom. Now I just need to draw the circle in this top one right here. Okay, so once again, well look, the back's going to just line up. I'm going to recycle those lines. I can find the center of this. And once again, the center of this is here, whereas the measured center would have, the perspective center would have probably been way the heck up here. The measured center is much lower. Measured center. So remember, it's just this. As if you measured that square. There it is. Okay. All right, so I've got that. And so I'll just come on over here. And see, just like so. So there's that. And so then, let me get rid of all the lines that I don't need so it's not near so confusing. Okay, and depending on whether or not you could see through, I'll get rid of all those things just to make it less confusing. Okay, and so then I'm just going to find halfway. See, this was here, so half of half. All right. All right. And then I could just nip off those corners again, just like so. Boop. And right there, and right there. And once again, my oval has practically made itself. And if you've done everything well, then everything, see right here, should just line up. Okay, so we see all that. Let's get rid of the last little things that we don't need. I don't need these corners back here, obviously. I don't need all this gobbledygook over here. And you can see why you draw really super light, right? Or don't even draw the lines that you won't absolutely need. A lot easier to draw the lines that you don't need. I should say, a lot easier to erase the lines that you don't need if they're not there. Okay. Okay, so all that gobbledygook is out of the way. So that we can see it more clearly, here is my nice little, see that? And here, if you could see through it, if it's transparent, you'd see this. So there it is. There's my nice little cylinder. If it wasn't transparent, I guess you wouldn't see any of that. And now there it is. I'm not too crazy. If I was to put a rim on something like this, I could just fake it, making it, fatter in the front, obviously, and skinnier as it came around the sides, right? So a little bit skinnier, let it get a little bit fatter, and a little skinnier again. Just faking it. Nobody's going to know, right? Okay. Okay, so finally we're going to be putting a circle within a circle. So you can see I did that when I made this central piece right in here. Okay, so I've got some guidelines already drawn for myself, but I'll make them a little bit darker and a little bit sloppier even. Okay, so here's my horizon. Okay, nothing new there. And then I've got my square that I'm making my initial circle from. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw back. And I draw all the way back to my horizon, just like so. And so how far does that go back? Well, I can go ahead and make that all the way back to here. Okay. And that gives me my edge right there. So there's my first square. Okay. And so if I went to this one here, to give me my perspective center. Now before, when we were just making the one circle, this line didn't count. This point was nothing. It was totally nothing because we didn't want to use the perspective center because, it doesn't make good circles. We wanted to use the measured center. And we will for both circles, but in a slightly different way. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's just make my first circle just by, taking and making a square out of this, just coming down, right? Finding the center of that right there, and just nipping those off and finding about halfway on those guys right there, right? And so in that way, I'll be able to make that pretty good ellipse, right? Oval, ellipse. I'm afraid I might use them interchangeably. So there's the first one right there. All good. And you know how to do that. So now, for the circle in the circle, it's basically the same thing. So here's my center. And I'm going to assume that I want the circle centered in my circle. And so arbitrarily, I'm just going to say, like, well, this is how big the square is that makes that circle. Okay. There was no reason for this other than that's just how big I decided it was going to be. And just like before, I'd go ahead and draw that back to my vanishing point. So I've got my perspective, right? I would go ahead and find the center. And so that should be the same, right? Because it's got the same center, so it should have the same central axis right there. So I'm going to go. So it's got the same central axis, so I'm just going to find my square. So there's my square, right? And you can see it's further back than what is the center of this ellipse, right? But that's because it is, after all, in perspective. If you had a square, within a square, that leading edge would be fatter, wouldn't it? Okay, so same thing. And so just like before, then what I'm going to do is within this one, I'm going to square that off. Okay, I'm going to find my center on that. And do all the same things over again, right? The big takeaway from this was just that you had to use the perspective center, right? It wasn't the measured center. The measured center used for making that initial first circle. But to put the second circle in the middle of it, you had to use the perspective center. When you did that, you made the circle in exactly the same way. And so there it is. And especially once I get rid of the things I don't need, you'll see that I've got a good circle, right? Good enough within a circle, and it's all just right. So cool. So now that we've done all sort of like the background information on that, I'll go through in the next tutorial and just kind of show you how I went about turning all those concepts into a picture.